Hassan gets bumped hard by you-know-who. Kachuk.
McDavid scores! Game winner! Series winner!
Oh, he scored! Oh, Steve Smith in attempting to get it out of his own zone, put it in the net!
Talbot and Mike Smith, they're going to go at center ice. This is the Battle of Alberta we've been waiting for 3 decades!
Welcome back, everyone, to the Fuel and Fire podcast. As always, I'm Josh with the Wincom. Faiz is here as well with the Oil Rig. Greg, Simon, and Aman from the Wincom and the Oil Rig as well. So we've got a good group here today to discuss the stretch drive of the season. On our last episode, we talked about the trade deadline and all the things that the Oilers did, all the things the Flames did not do. So now that we're kind of locked in for the season here, we got about a month and a half to see who gets in. For the Flames, it's about whether or not they get a playoff spot. For the Oilers, it's whether they get that division title. So from your guys' perspective on the Oilers side, how much do you think that division title is going to matter in the end, or is it just kind of get that home ice advantage and then go from there?
Yeah, I think it's a home ice advantage thing that's more important than where you are in the seeding. I mean, obviously you win the division, you guarantee yourself home ice for at least the first 2 rounds. But I think, it's more a stretch run of let's get there uninjured. Let's get there with some, momentum, sure. But I don't think the team as a whole, whether it's the players or the the management coaches, are necessarily focused on winning the division. I think fans are, obviously. It's always nice. But I think for them, it's just let's make sure we have a good position. Let's get in comfortably. And that's the second seed. Hey, it's worked out pretty decently the last 3 years. And, let's beat LA again. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm going to almost disagree where I think it's even, and obviously the team would never admit this, but I think it's advantageous to finish second and face LA instead of you get the division lead, you're playing that. I mean, the Central is going to be ahead of you, so you're going to be getting that top wild card, which is going to be maybe Colorado, maybe Minnesota. That would obviously not be as bad, but it could be worse to finish in the division leading seed for sure. It's a bit more of a gamble.
Yeah, that's true. That is, unless you're winning the actual conference and getting one of the Flames or the Canucks.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, I don't know if I'd want the emotion between those teams, when the Oilers play the Flames or the Canucks. Emotion's a dangerous thing in the playoffs. So, I'd be a little bit worried about playing them in the first round. So I think I'd rather play LA again, where I'm still worried that LA is finally going to beat us because, at what point can we continue this? But
yeah,
at least we know that they bring out actually a very good side of the Oilers to start the playoffs every year. And I think it is nice. You watch how the Oilers play from the first game against LA every year to when they finally win the series. And it is a huge step up. And I think that does lead to them doing better in the second round. Even against Vegas, we lost, but I think we should have won that series. But as an Oilers fan, I'm just don't get hurt and, get some guys going at the very least. But as long as you get home ice, and frankly, maybe, with playoff ticket prices, maybe let's not have home ice so I don't have to spend more money than I have to go to every game because I have a problem. But yeah, I mean, for Calgary fans, now that the trade deadline's done and you guys know you're still trying to make the playoffs, I got to feel the stretch one's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on it too, just with the conditions with their pick. You really don't want them to finish 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th last because they're going to be sending that to Montreal. So now it's not only do you want them to get in the playoffs, you want to make sure you're not, sinking in the standings into no man's land and then not having your pick and not getting into the playoffs. So I think, now that the deadline's passed, they've obviously settled on going for it. You just got to root for wins at this point and just hope they can climb up the standings as far as possible and get into the playoffs and then see what happens from there. But with no first round pick at this point, it's going to be a stressful couple months because I think from the beginning of the season, my prediction has always been they're going to be right in it until the last 2 weeks of the season, drop out and then give Montreal 12th overall. So that's still my biggest concern. But I think they're staying pace. They're just kind of alternating back and forth with Vancouver. I know St. Louis is kind of in the mix there now too. So is Utah. But yeah, I mean, it's good for the Flames that Vancouver is just incredibly mid as well. They're just it's just two terrible teams fighting it out to get the last wild card spot. It feels like anytime one team slips up and you think there's going to be a gap, then the other team also slips up, and then they just kind of keep alternating. So it's going to be really interesting to follow, because I think at this point, the only playoff spot you're going to get is wildcard 2. Like, you're not going to sneak into a Pacific Division spot. I know they're close to the Kings, but the Kings have 2 games in hand. They're a much better team. Like, it's wildcard 2 or ninth place, it seems like, which is, again, what this team has been through so many times. So you just got to pray that they can sneak in, because at least you can get some playoff games instead of just another season at ninth place.
Although I will say, they're only 4 points back from a theoretical top 10 pick. And a bunch of Western Conference teams added, especially Dallas with Rantanen, you know? I still think it's more likely that they end up with their own pick at the end of this year than they make the playoffs, just based off that. I don't know if a lot of people agree with that, but like right now, Utah has 66 points. They're 22nd. The Flames are at 70 points. We're 14th. You know, and just even before this trade deadline, I would have said Utah is a better team than Calgary. It's up in the air, but I would not be surprised at all to still see them with that maybe like 10th overall, 9th overall pick this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem looking at the standings, though, is how many of those teams that are trailing the Flames like were actual buyers that would jump them. Like, I mean, Ottawa, I guess, and Columbus were both buyers. But otherwise, like, I don't know how many of these teams actually perform better after the deadline. So I don't know. I wouldn't get my hopes up, man. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I'm fingers crossed for me.
As much as I hope you're right, like I really want you to be right on that. I don't know. I don't know that the Flames are actually top 10 bad with Wolf. I don't see them being like, I don't see Wolf letting them lose that many games in a row, if that makes sense. Maybe that's thinking our goaltender's even better than he actually is, but with how he's played this year, I don't know. I think it'd be pretty tough for the Flames to fall at this point without just, you know, sitting him on the bench. I think that's how you do it. If you want to lose, you don't play Wolf. I think it's almost as simple as that.
Yeah. I think unless, like, if Wolf goes down with an injury, then they're absolutely sinking into the bottom 10 immediately. Like, they're going to lose like 5 games for every win they get if Wolf's not there. But yeah, I think like we've seen all season, I've kind of just been telling myself, okay, eventually Wolf will probably start to slip and we'll see them fall. And he just hasn't. Like, he just keeps playing like he should be in the hard consideration. Like, if you watch this team, how little they score, and the fact that we're talking about a playoff spot, it's insane. It just doesn't seem like he's going to fall off. Like you said, Simon, I would love for that to happen, for them to get a top 10 pick, but Wolf is just single-handedly crushing our dreams right now, while also fulfilling our dreams of finally having a starting goalie. So it's like
Double-edged sword is what it is.
It's a double-edged sword. It's like, for the first time since Kiprusoff, we have a legitimately like elite goalie. On the other hand, he's really screwing over our rebuild here. So, you know, it would have been nice if we could have just waited, you know, one more year and then next year. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I think they live and die with Wolf at this point. So if he falls off, absolutely, I think they get a top 10 pick. But I think at this rate, it looks like he's going to single-handedly carry them to the playoffs. And if he does, I think he should garner hard votes. Like, I don't think he's going to win it, obviously. But, I mean, if you've watched even a couple games of this team this season, you know how terrible they are. Like, the fact that we're even talking about this, Wolf deserves a ton of credit for doing something that I don't think many goalies in the world could do, and get a Ryan Huska coach team into the playoffs. This episode of the Fuel and Fire podcast is proudly sponsored by Ollie Remthula, your go-to realtor in Calgary. Ollie is an award-winning industry leader who makes buying and selling real estate a seamless experience. No matter what your real estate needs are, Ollie's full support will make you feel at home while finding your home. Contact Ollie Remthula today at 403-477-2280 or ollie.remthula@gmail.com and make your real estate dreams a reality.
So if you want to make the playoffs, you know, which players, making the playoffs for the Flames and for Oilers getting a good position, which player do we need to dig in right now?
Dig in right now!
So for any new viewers, this is a segment where we each pick a player that we believe needs to dig in right now. In Connor McDavid's famous words, to get better, essentially. Who wants to start off with a player for the Flames that needs to be better if you guys are actually going to make the playoffs and or make some noise.
Yeah, I mean, I can get us started here. I think this is what a lot of people think. Igor Sharangovich, please, I am begging you, score some goals. Like, I am on my knees. I am begging, please, dear God, score some goals. You know, like you're on this new contract. That's great. Congrats, but we need goals. I think he's right neck and neck with Backlund, I think, in points right now. And I understand that Sharangovich is, when he's on, he is on. Like, he's probably got, like, him and Coronado probably have the best shot on the team. It's a lethal, lethal shot. Now, the problem, though, is he can't, or maybe not can't, but he hasn't really done anything else when he's playing. You know, like, if he's not getting his looks, he's a ghost. So I don't know if this is Sharangovich's fault. I don't know if this is Huska's fault. Maybe it's both. It probably is. But you need to put him in a system where he can thrive. And he needs to put himself in a situation where he can thrive. Just start firing the puck. Miss the net, hit the net, I don't care. One of them will go in. Let's just shoot, you know? And if it works, then maybe we'll actually win a period in the playoffs. Who knows? So let's try it out. I think that's my player. And I hope he goes crazy now and starts scoring a lot.
Fair enough. All right. Oh, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to take Michael Backlund for this. I'm going to take the cap. I think he's having a pretty poor year overall. It's not necessarily his fault. Age is starting to catch up to him. He's 35. He's been on the team for as long as any of us can remember. But even on the defensive side, he's starting to falter a little bit. I think if the Flames really want to do literally any like playoffs here, he's got to be a big part of that middle six. I'm not saying he needs to be the best center on the team. I'm not saying he needs to be a point per game. I'm not saying anything like that. All I want is him to be able to have that strong defense we've seen in the past. Win a few faceoffs for us. Just do what you have done in the past. Just live up to what he has been in the previous 5 years. Maybe make a deal with the devil. Get one more year. Just one more. That's all I'm asking. I think if Michael Backlund can turn it up a little bit, I think it would definitely do a lot for this team.
All right. I'll go last here. I'm going to go a bit off the board. I'm going to go with a coach. I'll go with
off
Ryan.
the board for you?
Well, if you've seen my Twitter feed, you know it's not off the board. But yeah, I'm going to go with Ryan Huska. I know our good friend Alex kind of went off on Huska a couple months ago on this podcast, so I'm not going to go that in depth. He kind of covered all my thoughts there. I don't want to take everyone's day up, but yeah, I think Huska. It's just I don't think he's doing enough right now. I think personally, I think the Flames are one of the worst coach teams in the league. I think he's just ever since he's come in, he's kind of been over his head. And I think you look at this team, they're second last in the NHL in goals. I think, look, they don't have a lot of talent, but I think on paper, there's no way this team should be scoring less goals than like the Chicago Blackhawks or the Anaheim Ducks or like Sharks even. Like, it's just his system just hasn't worked. It's kind of that Jeff Ward system where it's like, call myself a defensive coach, but my team can't defend, and then we also can't score, and our special teams suck. And it's just, so yeah, I really think Ryan Huska needs to dig in. Like, it's hard to envision him as the coach for this team, as a successful team, because he's very much like plain bread as a coach. He's kind of like net zero. Like, they're not that good offensively. They're not that good defensively. It's really just Dustin Wolf floating Huska right now and keeping his name out of the media and in a negative sense. So yeah, I think, look, it's still early for the guy. He's done some good things before he was the head coach of the Flames, so I'm not going to write him off completely, but I think if this team wants to do anything in the playoffs, he really needs to dig in and kind of stop playing Zary on the fourth line or alternating Coronado and Zary on the fourth line. It's just, there's a lot of areas where he can improve, so I think he needs to dig in if he wants to have a job in a year or two, and I think if the Flames want to do anything in the playoffs. So I'll leave it at that.
That's fair. And I think, Simon, didn't you write an article recently kind of going over Huska stuff?
I did. I will say, I don't think it was really a negative one. Honestly, I tried to play a little bit of devil's advocate because I do think a lot of Flames Twitter is maybe beating on him a little bit too much, especially with some more recent stuff with him putting Zary on the fourth line. That's a pretty egregious one that I know a lot of us in the Win column have been definitely beating up on him for. But overall, I do agree with something you said there, Josh, with him just being net zero. He hasn't been bad. I think that has been the thing for me. Like, he hasn't been great, but he hasn't been bad. He's just been okay. And I think at points, we've seen a lot of people acting like he's a great coach. And I do think that Wolf is the reason behind that. I think Wolf is definitely elevating how good he has looked. But to say he's been bad, I think wouldn't necessarily be true. Because I think the Jeff Ward comparison, I think, is really funny because Jeff Ward was bad. He was brutal. That era of Flames hockey was really hard to watch. I don't know. Maybe it's just Wolf making him look better than Ward. But at least in my opinion, Huska's not bad. I think he's just mediocre right now. That's all we're seeing out of him. And again, he's not being given a lot of help, to be fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a mediocre team. So
Yeah, but it's not like he has a good roster. So it's I'll give him that. It's not like he's working with a good, talented team and he's sinking them. If you give him talent, maybe he'll do better. So I think we still have to wait and see. I do worry about a guy like Zane Prek coming and playing in his like zero event defensive system and just absolutely nuking any creativity from a player like that. So that's a little worrisome for me. But yeah, that is fair. Like he's not exactly working with a lot of talent. So maybe he's the coach who, needs that talent to be successful. We'll see if they get that talent. But yeah, I think it's just disappointing to see this team scoring this little because I don't think they're that bad. Like I think you've got players who have produced in the past. You brought in Frost and Farabee. Like this isn't like a bottom 5 roster, I don't think, but they're producing like one. And I think that's where you kind of point back to coaching and say something clearly isn't clicking here when this many players are having career worst seasons and scoring at career worst rates. You kind of got to turn your head and look to the coach. And I think we did the same thing like with Daryl Sutter near the end there. It was like, okay, if everyone is playing this poorly, it's probably the coach, and it was. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But who knows? He has a really bald, shiny head, so I'll give him that.
Does that win him like an extra season, you think?
Yeah, just how shiny his head is on the bench.
That's a bright spot. Yeah.
All right, well, let's turn away from that.
Yeah,
Go to the Oilers.
Karma's gonna come down hard. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm already wearing a hat. So, Greg, for the Oilers, who are you gonna pick to dig in?
Yeah, I think some of the win column team needs to dig in right now. Yeah, right. Start cheering for your team to win. Yeah, no, the Devils can lose for you. Don't worry about losing.
Speaking of losing,
Gets kicked off.
He's tired of us. He's like, I'm out of here.
Holy! Who booted him? Did he just get taken by the shed?
Just threw us all into the bus and then dipped out.
Was that my fault again, guys? Maybe I need to dig in.
That was incredible timing.
I'll cheer for them. Listen, I'll cheer for them, no problem. I'm just keeping my expectations low so that I don't get hurt. There's a game to this.
Game one of the playoffs, if they're there, I'll be cheering for them, obviously, at that point. But as long as there's the potential that they finish 11th last, I'm not cheering for them until we know for sure they're in the playoffs.
That's some pride, man.
You gotta just blow us in round one, don't you? That's why you're saying this.
No, you guys, you're gonna beat the Jets. Trust me. It's all good. No, don't worry.
Who on the Oilers should dig in, Greg?
But the real answer is Stuart Skinner for sure. I mean, a huge vote of confidence that the team didn't acquire some help in this area. He's going to have to play as good as he looks.
Yeah, fair. That's
a shout out to Team Mustache. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is a nice mustache. So yeah, no.
November all year.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I think that is the obvious answer for sure. Still, they're going to go anywhere. They need him. Connor McDavid is struggling at times. Granted, he still has 10 points in 7 games since the break, but at least other players can pick it up when you're the goalie. No one else can pick it up. I'm going to go with someone that's maybe a little off the board, but I'm going to go with Matthias Janmark. In the finals last year, especially in the playoffs, he was huge for the team as a depth player. I think this season he started okay, getting points and providing energy and PK. And I think he's lagged. He had one of the worst breakaway attempts I've ever seen. So it's kind of like, I do when I watch that. That to me looks like a player who's overthinking things because he's struggling. I think generally speaking, normally his move there would just be actually shoot the puck, like forehand, not try and do that backhand fake out. And I think, as a third line guy who does the penalty killing, if Janmark is running hot and playing well, I think he boosts the team in that respect. I do think he's a pretty big component of the team. So maybe it's not the most important guy, but I do think we need him to get going as well, just to give that bottom six someone other than Corey Perry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a testament to what they did last year. Like, the penalty kill was completely amazing, like a huge flip. They went on a huge run. They let in like 1 or 2 power play goals the whole playoff run, and then as at even strength, that line locked in too. I mean, I think it might be a lot to ask for them to be just as good this year, but we'll see. I mean, it'd be nice. Maybe we'll see more of Perry or Jones or some different looks on that third line with Skinner, maybe, or Evander Kane. Who knows if that guy's coming back? Like, there's going to be lots of options. It might be hard for them to keep that even strength role, but the penalty kill, definitely dig in right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's special teams is supposed to be this team's bread and butter, and they're not really clicking on either end. So just a testament to how good this team is that they're still winning games besides that. So on our one of our last videos, we got some comments with some pretty cool questions, things that we should discuss here on the pod. One of them was, who is Edmonton's second rival, outside of Calgary or after Calgary, I guess. And we can flip that question as well for Calgary, who they have as a rival outside of the Oilers. I think it's pretty good too, because I think based on where the teams are right now and how this podcast, we seem to be pretty congenial a lot of the time. I don't think there's much fire between the Oilers and Flames as there used to be. So I think it's actually a very timely topic. What are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, it's a hard question. I mean, everyone hates the Leafs, so that is an evergreen answer, honestly. Well, yeah. I mean, it's easy to go with other Canadian teams like Vancouver.
Yeah.
Definitely don't like those guys. And the playoff series was epic last year, so that definitely helps. I mean, to me, like, the Stars always seems like a classic rivalry, but I mean, this is also just a personal bias. Some of the first playoff series that I can recall was like some of those Stars Oilers series in the early 2000s. Yeah, so some great stuff there. I guess that'd be like maybe Canucks, maybe Stars, but definitely the Leafs.
It's fair. I mean, yeah, Canucks are definitely up there. I mean, I think it also depends on, are you talking fan base rivals, or are you talking the actual team rivals? I think if it's fan base, it's going to be one of Vancouver or Vegas. I think if you're talking to the players themselves, I think it's LA. I think, every time they play LA these days, it's fireworks regardless of when it is in the season. You play this team 3 years in a row in the playoffs, you're not going to like each other. And I think that definitely shows. And I like it as being must-watch hockey. And so I'm going to say LA is probably the bigger rival at this point. It's like the Dallas Stars. We played Dallas so many years in a row, and they kept curb stomping us, so we hated Dallas. We're on the other side of this now, where LA plays us every year. It's almost like that meme where it's like LA looks at us and says, "You've taken everything from us," and they're like, well, it's like, we don't even know who you are. And so, yeah. But for the Flames, I don't actually know. I could not pick out of the hat who your guys' rival would be, other than, I guess, you personally. It seems to be us and your own team, but you can't pick your own team. Okay, so
yeah, I'm not really sure, honestly. I think it's harder with the fact that a lot of our secondary rivals have also not been that good in the last little bit. Because off of memory, from the 2010s, I would have said, obviously the Canucks. You know what? I should start there, because that is the obvious one. I was kind of trying to go in another direction, but obviously the Canucks. That's an obvious one. But in my head, I kind of think the Ducks. I think for a long while that they were definitely a team that we definitely had a rivalry with. Whether that rivalry was them stepping on us constantly, you could make that argument. But I think there was definitely something there for a while. I like the Stars picks for Edmonton. I think that was definitely there in that playoff series that we had a few years back. It's tough for the Flames right now just because we haven't necessarily been in that contending shape. So it's harder to pick rivals when they're not necessarily in the same spot they were previously.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I think like you referenced for the Oilers ones, it's like rivalries outside of your like divisional or like location rivalries are really born in the playoffs. Like you could have rivals that come out of nowhere you never would have thought of, but if you play in the playoffs like 2 or 3 times, you're going to have a rivalry. And like you said, the Flames just haven't been in the playoffs very much, so they haven't really had a chance to build new rivals. So I think, like, can I say their biggest rival is common sense? Like, it's.
I said no. I said you had to pick a different team.
I think I would go with Vancouver. I think that's the only one that makes sense. Like, especially given now they're both going to be fighting for the same playoff spot. And I know when the Flames had their whole like mass exodus a couple of years ago, Canucks fans were kind of piling on. And then last year the Canucks were great, and now this year they're having their own little mass exodus. So like I think there's that kind of like little brother fighting under the Oilers between the Canucks and Flames of like watching each other implode. So I think that's kind of created a rivalry of now the Flames are laughing at Canucks fans seeing their team leave. And at the very least, now they're fighting for the wild card spot. But yeah, it's just hard. Like Simon said, like, when you're not in the playoffs very much and you're not playing teams over and over, if you're not like Toronto, Boston, or Toronto, Tampa, who like Toronto and Tampa have never had a rivalry, but when you play in the playoffs like 3 times, you're going to be rivals, and the Flames don't play in the playoffs very often. So I'll say the Canucks, I guess, and then hopefully, yeah, I mean, I hope we can start building some rivals again, because I think there was kind of one budding with Dallas, like with Kachuk around and him running around like with a chicken with his head cut off, but then he's out east now, so that rivalry's kind of dead. So
yeah, him and Doughty were kind of chirping each other for a while too, right?
Yeah, that's
that
the thing.
was
like,
fun. Yeah,
like players like Kachuk literally build rivalries themselves. Like he's just a little past. He started stuff with Dallas. Edmonton is an obvious one, but yeah, like with Doughty in LA, and I think for a while there, Flames fans didn't like LA because of that. So like when you don't have a player like that who's just kind of just starting stuff with everyone who steps on the ice against them, then it's harder to find rivalries. Like Michael Backlund, Jonathan Huberdeau is not going to be creating a rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, I've had more time than both of you to think, and I don't know who to say. You know, like I think Vancouver right now, I think, Josh, you're right. As of right now, since they're both fighting for a playoff spot, they're both in the Pacific. There is that kind of historic rivalry back then with Vancouver, Calgary. I think I have to say Vancouver. For me, though, from a fan base side, like fan base rivalry, I love beating former Flames. It's great. Like whenever the Flames, and it's rare, but whenever the Flames can beat Vegas and Noah Hannafin, I'm ecstatic. If they can beat Boston and send Lindholm and Zadorov packing, I'm ecstatic. You know, so that's kind of how I think of it. There is still some lingering memories of that Dallas series. So whenever we get a puck past Ottinger, it feels like we won the Stanley Cup. So there's those types of things, but again, I don't think the players look at it that way. As a fan base rivalry, I would say that stuff, but yeah, I think it like just has to be Vancouver. I think everyone else just kind of, especially in the league, probably just forgets that the Flames exist right now. You know, so we're kind of just, oh, we hate you, blah blah blah, but the teams again are like, oh, we don't know who you are. So I think outside, just based off that, I would just say Vancouver. Just keep it simple. Don't overthink it. I would just say Vancouver.
If we're just talking about who we hate, I think we can all jump on the dog pile of that we all hate the Leafs. And we
all hate the Leafs. We all hate Vegas.
Yeah, that's a good call. Brad Treliving, like Mr. Boston Pizza, like I already hated the Leafs. Like every Canadian team fan base just naturally hates the Leafs. It's just part of being a Canadian fan. But especially when Treliving went there, I'm like, now I just hate them even more. Like I know in the last pod I said he made some good moves, so credit where it's due, but I hope they go out in 7 games in the first round again and we can watch them implode, because yeah, that's always fun watching the Leafs and then their fan base just melt down every year. So, but yeah, like you said, former players, like former GMs, I think that's the biggest rivalry for the Flames right now for their fan base is like, yeah, it's awesome seeing Zadorov and Lindholm be stuck on a rebuilding Bruins team after they like turned down the Flames because we were rebuilding, and now they're in the exact same scenario. Like Hannafin is, I mean, outside of hockey too, but he's not a guy you can root for. So it's always nice seeing Vegas lose, and like Stone went there and Eichel went there instead of Calgary. So just from a personal hate watching perspective, it's always nice to see Vegas lose too, because it's you never want to see your former players go on to glory like we saw last year with Kachuk. So I would be happy if that never happened again.
That's fair enough. I think from a fan base perspective, definitely when you've been spurned, Oilers fans know that too. So I think that's pretty fair comments on that end. Well, hopefully the Battle of Alberta rivalry is going to come back. We thought we were going to have it a couple of years ago after that playoff round, and everyone was like, this is going to be the 80s again. And then it didn't. Hopefully that rivalry does spark both on the ice and then in this podcast, because I think we're being too friendly other than Greg calling you out this episode. So at least we're getting somewhere. But yeah, and to everyone listening, thanks again so much for joining us. Thanks again for the comments. If you have any other questions or topics or anything you want to hear us talk about, throw it in the comments. Remember to subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our blogs, The Win Column and The Oil Rig, and we will see you guys next time.